Folks, it is time for the new moon in Aquarius video. The new moon in Aquarius is tomorrow, 2:59 p.m. in less than 24 hours as I tape this, 2:59 p.m. Pacific time. There are two videos I did recently that I'm going to reference in this. It's not to try and get you, it's to keep the information that I have to share relatively condensed. So first and foremost, as we head into the new moon in Aquarius video, a friendly reminder that we've still got Venus in the sign of Venus and Mars in the sign of Capricorn, and both Venus and Mars leaves Capricorn and enters Aquarius on the 12th or the 13th of February, depending on where you are, and Venus leaves Capricorn and enters Aquarius on February 15th, 16th, depending on where you are. So until then, we've still got a couple of planets in the sign of Capricorn. And 2 videos ago, I think I did a video explaining that while the new moon in Capricorn and the 28 days after that, the kind of month of Capricorn, ends tomorrow, and the month of Aquarius begins with the new moon in the sign of Aquarius, 28 days of Aquarian focus, of a very particular kind, and I'll talk about what that means in a second. The sign of Capricorn is one of the signs that is going to be on a burner, where things continue to be on a slow simmer and sometimes at a boil for the rest of the year. We've got 2 full moons in Capricorn, as I mentioned in that video, in June and July, and of course Pluto comes back to finish up its 2008 beginning transit in the sign of Capricorn by the end of this year. Okay, so that's the major transit that was remaining in the sign of Capricorn, which was Venus in Capricorn trining Uranus in Taurus, happened yesterday. So now Venus and Mars are essentially on their way out of Capricorn, but still there till the middle of February. So if there are things that you would like to wrap up in Capricorn and take advantage of Mars's energy for the next, let's say 3 or 4 days, and Venus's energy for another week or so, by all means, feel free to do so and wrap things up there. Now, the last video I did is even more relevant. It's actually, frankly, relevant to the new moon in Aquarius video. The last video I did outlined all the transits that are going to be made by the so-called personal planets as they transit through the sign of Aquarius. The personal planets being the Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. And they are going to be making these transits between, they're going to be transiting the sign of Aquarius between January the 20th, when the Sun entered Aquarius, till March the 22nd. Mars is going to be the last of these planets to leave the sign of Aquarius and enter Pisces on March the 22nd. So it's a 2-month period where the annual-ish transits of Sun, Mercury, and Venus, and the every 2-year transit of Mars are occurring, and it's a compact, focused set of transits. The other thing that I said is, while right now all the planets are squished into 5 signs: Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, and Taurus. In about a week's time, they will leave Capricorn and we will have planets in 4 signs: Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, and Taurus. And after March the 22nd, we will have planets in 3 signs: Pisces, Aries, and Taurus. And that is as squished as they're going to get. So the energy is going to get more and more concentrated. As those of you who've been following my videos know, the signs of Aries and Taurus is where there is expansive, adventurous, forward-moving, growth, exciting energy and transits, with Jupiter and Uranus getting ready to conjunct in April in Taurus, and Chiron and the North Node conjuncting again in about a week's time in Aries, but remaining there. The sign of Pisces, where Saturn and Neptune are currently transiting, is where there's a certain amount of heaviness, but also an opportunity to handle and manage crises responsibly and with a sense of priority. crises that have been brewing since 2014, 15, 16. That said, as you know, the transits that occurred through the sign of Capricorn, which end, by the middle of this month, were supportive of these adventurous energies in Aries and Taurus. What I outlined in the last video and what I'm summarizing now because it is relevant is that these planets that transit, the transits that are occurring through the sign of Aquarius, are supporting Jupiter and Uranus transits in Taurus, Jupiter trying to create a 12, 13-year new cycle in the sign of Taurus. And by that I mean, where does Taurus sit in your chart? What house does it occupy? And what does that house stand for? And end a 12, 13-year cycle there. And Uranus make you more authentic, more unique, more authentic, that's the right word. Put you in charge, in the current, in the flow of activities and matters related to the house where Taurus sits in your birth chart in a way that is truly you and not really, Uranus is not inclined to pay attention to conventional wisdom or how things are normally done, but it's much more interested in outlining and getting you to follow the path and create your identity and take action in the part of the chart where Taurus sits, the house that is occupied by Taurus in your birth chart, in a way that is authentic to you and therefore fulfilling to you. Okay, so the transits through the sign of Aquarius of the Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Mars are supporting Jupiter and Uranus in the sign of Taurus. But they are forming squares, which means that these transits require action to be taken related to the sign of Aquarius. And by that, I mean where the sign of Aquarius sits in your birth chart, what house it occupies, what that house stands for, matters related to that. Action needs to be taken in order to allow Jupiter and Uranus to truly manifest what they're trying to manifest in the sign of Taurus. And because these are important and expansive and exciting and adventurous energies, it's almost like they're missing pieces required in the Aquarius part of the chart that need to show up, that need to be created, that need to be manifested, that energy needs to be put in the Aquarius part of the chart, because Jupiter and Uranus are dependent on finding the right pieces, taking the right action, finding the right partners, if you like, finding the right solutions in the Aquarius part of the chart, the house occupied by the sign of Aquarius in your birth chart. And as those pieces come together and as that energy and those actions are taken, Jupiter and Uranus and Taurus can continue to manifest what they're trying to manifest in the sign of Taurus. There's a sense, because it is a 2-month period, there's a sense of urgency and necessity and kind of a fire under our butts that wasn't really there when the transits in the sign of Capricorn were taking place through the months of January and into February. Those transits, especially to the sign of Taurus, were harmonious. There were trines. And while there were squares to the sign of Aries, it was still, we were still, till about the 10th or 11th of January, we were still coming into January. And since January 10th or 11th, and especially after that new moon, that full moon in Leo on the 25th, we've been gathering momentum, getting into action, planting those seeds. But now with this new moon cycle in Aquarius, it really is time for action, particularly the next 2 weeks. Always remember, with the new moon, the wave starts to come to the shore, it crashes onto the shore on the full moon and then starts to pull back. Now, the energy right after the new moon, first and foremost, let's talk about the energy of the next 24 hours and even the last 24, the 48 to 72 hours before a new moon. If all of a sudden you find that your productivity has dropped, that you are dreamier, that it's harder for you to get things done, that you're wrapping things up, maybe focused on a certain amount of chores, and you don't, that's normal. The moon is getting smaller. Our emotional and our intuitive energy, it's fading. The moon is going to conjunct the sun at the time of the new moon. And it is going to be, the moon is combust for all intents and purposes. The moon is not visible. The moon has no energy. The moon is looking to be in conversation with the sun, our solar self, our real self, and take its direction from the sun and start to grow over the next 14 days, and then come back down again over the 14 days after that. The new moon in Aquarius is directly related to the full moon in Leo 2 weeks ago. So if you remember what came to some sort of a head or some sort of a crest around that time, then you'll know what to move forward on some level, and you'll start to get a sense of what there's an opportunity to create to some extent over the next 28 days. But really, the guidance around what to create is to look at your birth chart and see where the sign of Aquarius sits, and try and understand and make the connection between what needs to be created and what energy needs to be poured into the Aquarius part of the chart, so that the Taurus part of the chart can continue to experience its regeneration and its growth and its expansion. Okay? Now, as you head towards the new moon tomorrow, be kind to yourself if you are not try and be in action, try and wrap up things, do what you feel you need to do, but also understand you are no longer going to be in that kind of phase of productive energy that you were in the last week of January and into early February. Once the new moon occurs, it's kind of astonishing to me always after the new moon, once the new moon occurs, it's as if the wind starts to come behind our sails. But the energy that you have to pour into something is still dependent on the size of the moon. So it takes a few days for the energy to get going. And by the time that quarter moon is done in about 7 days' time, and as you head to the full moon, the energy starts to become sort of full and jangly. As I've mentioned to you, the most productive time to get things done is the week after the full moon. However, do not use that as an excuse, as a reason to not be in action, especially in the Aquarius part of the chart. Once the new moon in Aquarius happens, please look at this Aquarius month between February the 9th and the new moon in Pisces is March the 10th as a time to pour your energy into the Aquarius part of the chart and to manifest and create what you need to there. Remember, my friends, and I'm summarizing a few things I talked about in the last video that did an overview of the transits in Aquarius. Remember that Mars and Venus conjunct in Aquarius on February the 22nd. Now, this is a conjunction that happens every year, so we don't need to look at it as though, again, do not, with astrology, a lot of transits, the sun conjuncting Pluto, Mars conjuncting Pluto every 2 years. Sometimes these transits are made into, especially on the internet and on Facebook, as if this huge dramatic things that are going to occur. But the Venus-Mars conjunction is still consummation time. It's relationship time. It's financial opportunity time. So why not, whether something manifests or doesn't manifest, or whether it feels like it's manifesting or not, whether it feels big or small, why not use the energy of the transits that we currently have? I really would be willing to put money on, if each of you looked at your birth charts and looked at the Aquarius part of the chart, it wouldn't surprise me at all if action needs to be taken in that part of the chart so that you can, wouldn't surprise me at all if action needs to be taken in that part of the chart. And and you have a sense of what that action is. What are the pieces that need to come together? And as I said, it's a cycle that can take you back to July 2023, when Venus and Mars were supposed to conjunct in Leo, the opposite sign of Aquarius, where the full moon happened on January 25th of this year, but were not able to because Venus went retrograde just before they were going to conjunct. Now, the transits, again, a quick summary, that these personal planets are going to make through Aquarius are specifically, really all of this does have something to do with the new moon, are specifically the planets as they enter Aquarius. They conjunct Pluto, they will square Jupiter in Taurus, they will trine the South Node in Libra, they will square Uranus in Taurus, and then they will make their way out of Aquarius into Pisces. Those are the aspects these transiting planets will make. The South Node is in Libra. The trine is a supportive trine, and we are in a Libra eclipse cycle. The last new moon solar eclipse occurred in the sign of Libra in the middle of October, and its consequent full moon lunar eclipse is occurring in the sign of Libra on March the 24th. The week before and after January 24th could have provided valuable occurrences, for example, related to this particular eclipse of release in the sign of Libra with the current eclipse cycle. It's a south node eclipse in Libra. We're meant to release something in the Libra part of the chart, the house occupied by Libra and what that stands for, and lean into the Aries part of the chart. That is where the growth is. Now, the Libra eclipse cycle is the only sort of complete eclipse cycle in the Aries Libra set of eclipses that we're experiencing currently. And by that I mean where you have a solar eclipse and a corresponding lunar eclipse 5 or 6 months later in the same sign. You are not only going to feel the need to release something in the Libra part of the chart, you're also going to consequently feel the pull in the Aries part of the chart to lean into that direction and grow in that direction. These points work together. So once again, the planets will conjunct Pluto, square Jupiter, trine the south node, square Uranus, and make their way back out. Now, let's talk about this new moon, 16 minutes into this video. The new moon occurs. All these transits, the only planet so far that has made all these transits, conjunct Pluto, but more importantly, in this particular planet's case, because the conjunction to Pluto occurred in Capricorn on the January the 20th, squaring Jupiter and Uranus and trining the south node is the Sun. The Sun is not an action-oriented planet. It is a reflective spotlight connection to our truest higher self, connection to source. So the Sun entered Aquarius on January the 20th, 21st, January the 20th. Pluto entered on the 21st. Pluto is in Aquarius for good starting 2025, in Aquarius for the next few months, and the Sun and Aquarius, Sun and Pluto entered together. All these planets, the timing of Pluto's entry, and there's a separate video I did on Pluto and the Sun entering Aquarius. You can look that up in my video list. The planets entering the sign of Aquarius, the timing of Pluto's entry into Aquarius is significant this year because it is timed perfectly for all these personal planets to, as soon as they enter Aquarius, to be in communication with Pluto. Pluto, when it enters a sign, you do start to get a sense of the transformations that Pluto is trying to make in the Aquarius part of the chart over the next 19 years. And the way to connect that is, if you look at the Capricorn part of the chart where Pluto's ending its cycle, if you go back to 2008, it wouldn't surprise me at all that from this vantage point, you can see what started in 2008 that has resulted in an enormous transformation in the Capricorn part of your chart that gets completed by the end of this year, 2024, as Pluto transits from Capricorn into Aquarius. The Sun has completed all these transits. In fact, the Sun squares Uranus today on the 8th of February, and then the new moon occurs tomorrow. The new moon occurs right after our higher self has surveyed and assessed and become clear about what needs to happen in the sign of Aquarius in such a way that it supports Jupiter and Uranus and Taurus and supports the south node or the eclipses on the Aries-Libra axis, but particularly the south node in Libra. The only other transits that have been made out before the new moon are Mercury conjuncting Pluto on February the 5th, a couple of days ago. Mercury is now in Aquarius, and it met up with Pluto on the 5th. So, as I said in my last video, it wouldn't surprise me if, as you were heading towards the 5th of February, communications related to whatever it is that you need to do and achieve in the sign of Aquarius over the next month and a half started to occur and started to gather momentum. Mars will enter Aquarius in a few days' time, on the 13th, in 5 days' time. And Venus will enter Aquarius on the 16th, 17th. But, coming back to the new moon, prior to the new moon, the only transits, the only aspects that have been made by the personal planets is that the sun has completed all the aspects it was due to make, has kept all the appointments in its solar review of the sign of Aquarius before the new moon. And the only other thing that has happened is that Mercury has come into Aquarius, met up with Pluto, and some transformation-related communications, I expect, or I imagine, are out there. Communication, commuting, transportation, traveling, transactions, gossip, chatter, social media, technology, learning, skill acquisition, thinking, processing, all of that is now underway. Once Mars comes, now, before I get to all that, all the other aspects that the personal planets are going to make are going to occur during what I am calling the month of Aquarius, from the new moon in Aquarius to the new moon in Pisces. Now you might say, well, Avi, that's how it does not always happen that way. It does not always happen that way. The month of Aquarius, for all intents and purposes, ends on March the 10th. But you've still got Venus and Mars. I mean, understandably, Venus moves out of into Pisces on the 11th, but you've still got Mars till the 22nd in the sign of Aquarius. Where, had things been different, it might have been making aspects that were relevant or related to transiting through the Aquarius part of the chart. The new moon in Aquarius occurs. I'm so glad you're with me and you're allowing me to build this up for you. The new moon in Aquarius occurs after the sun has completed its most significant part of its survey over the sign of Aquarius, the house occupied by the sign of Aquarius in your birth chart. Looked at every nook and cranny, illuminated it all, made its assessment, communicated with Source, allowed you to communicate with Source, your higher self, around what needs to occur in the sign of Aquarius to allow Jupiter and Uranus to do their job in Taurus and the South Node to do its job as it transits Libra. And then the new moon occurs. It is time for action. I don't care if this astrologer just told you that the most productive time is the week after the full moon. That is not when you need to be waiting for action. And the nature of the action has a sense of urgency to it. And you're going to feel it. These are squares to Jupiter and Uranus. You're at a stop sign, and Jupiter and Uranus are looking at each of these planets to say, are you going to move? Because I got to move. You're the faster moving planet Mercury. You're the faster moving planet Venus. You're the faster moving planet Mars. Do what you need to do. Move forward so that I can continue to go. As you enter the new moon cycle in Aquarius tomorrow, it would not surprise me energetically if you are clear and feel like 2024 is finally underway. Did not start that process till about January the 10th. Gathering much more momentum, much greater productivity as you headed to the full moon in Leo and beyond that. We are well past, we're 2 weeks past January the 25th. We are here. Yes, the past 48 hours and the next 24 hours may feel depleted and spacey and even depressed and kind of hopeless. Really know how to manage that energy. If you feel sad and hopeless and like nothing is happening and nothing will happen and what am I doing? And very characteristic of the 48 hours prior to a new moon. Really learn to, when you feel that heaviness or that sadness or that depletion or the depression, to understand where you are at the lunar cycle And I am not talking about, I am not a doctor, I'm not a mental health professional, I'm not talking about medical diagnoses, or I am not talking about depression or emotional mental health issues from a medical perspective. I need to make that clear. I am talking about energy. I'm talking about a more mundane kind of feeling of depletion. Be patient with yourself in the 48 hours before a new moon if things feel flat and hopeless, and wait till the new moon to occur and for the energy start to come back and to build. Once that new moon occurs tomorrow afternoon for me, and whatever it is for you, wherever you are, it is time for action. And you know it and you feel it. And it is part of planting seeds to have a fruitful and exciting and interesting 2024. As I have reminded you, by the time we get to the sun entering the sign of Pisces on February the 20th, as we get past Mars and Venus conjunct in Aquarius on the 22nd, as we head to that full moon in Virgo, which is opposing Saturn and the Sun and Mercury in Pisces on, is it the 25th of this month of February, in 2 weeks' time, we are going to be forced to balance these expansive energies that we've been dealing with since January the 10th with more responsible and serious and heavier energies of what we have to deal with in the sign of Pisces. Some of these energies will still be expansive and interesting and fun and real, and might even have a contractual sense about them as we head into Pisces season with as the planets enters Pisces. The first meeting they're going to have is with Saturn, which is transiting Pisces right now. Whatever one thinks of the conjunctions with Pluto, it's those conjunctions with Saturn that will start to happen that are really going to put a bit of a damper on our, that are going to make things real. But also, those conjunctions with Saturn and the energy shifting into Pisces is going to bring the energy leaks and the crises in the sign of Pisces front and center more and more, for us to realize that we've got to contend with them, so that this growth in the Aries and Taurus part of the chart and the work that we have put in to fuel that growth and plant the seeds in January and February are not derailed by crises and issues related to the Pisces part of the chart, where responsible action needs to be taken. So for the next 2 weeks, it really, the planets are moving forward. The forward-moving energy remains till about March the 25th, 22nd, 26th, before Mercury gets ready to go retrograde in Aries. And by that time, we'll truly have all the planets in just 3 parts of the chart: Pisces, Aries, Taurus. But in terms of just pure, unadulterated seed planting, important, urgent, necessary action that needs to be taken in order to continue to grow into 2024 is concerned, next 2 weeks. The new moon happens, and it's kind of nice that the new moon is happening just before a weekend, because you're going to feel the energy, but it's still, while the moon is still going into its tiny crescent, it'll take about 48 hours for the energy to keep going. But my friends, if you can be in action after the new moon, be in action after the new moon. It's a 2-week period. And you likely have been doing so much already and putting so much in motion since January the 10th, but really escalating since January the 24th. And it is now I'm going to be a little crude with an expression. It is now crap or get off the pot time. I'm sorry, I can't think of anything. It is now time to commit. And even though the sign of Aquarius has these transits over a 2-month period, and the sign of Aquarius and Pisces and Aries and Taurus and soon Gemini have transits that continue in importance, have pots brewing for the rest of the year, or for at least a significant portion of the year. The Aries energy will become a little lighter by the time we get to the second half of this year, but not, well, we still have some eclipses going into it into next year. Irrespective, even though the Aquarius part of the chart is technically mildest or most concentrated. It is the most concentrated. There's a significant part of the chart, the Taurus part of the chart, that is dependent on the actions that we take over the next 4 weeks. And all the remaining aspects, Mercury conjuncting Jupiter, Mercury trining the South Node, Mercury squaring Jupiter, Mercury trining the South Node, Mercury squaring Uranus, Mars conjuncting Pluto, then squaring Jupiter, trining the South Node, squaring Uranus, Venus conjuncting Pluto, squaring Jupiter, trining the South Node, squaring Uranus. All of this happens over the next 28 days. Now, as far as I am concerned, this new moon is unaspected. Other astrologers will say that it is squaring Uranus. The squares to Uranus are completed before the new moon occurs. The new moon occurs after the sun, our most connected self, has outlined the agenda for what needs to occur in the sign of Aquarius. And some of this activity the sun entered Aquarius on January the 20th. Wouldn't surprise me that since January the 15th, there's been some, it wouldn't surprise me at all if some of the actions and activities that you've been taking since January the 10th have been leading up to what is so concentrated over the next 2 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks, 2 weeks. And it can continue till March the 25th. But then after 2 weeks, the energies are we're gonna have to incorporate other energies that we're gonna have to try and balance. Why not go for it? If there are things that we want out of 2024, why not go for it? And why not having an understanding of what size the moon is, gives us a way of knowing how to manage our own energy, our own emotional energy, our own intuitive energy, our own set. So to cooperate with it, to not push so hard, to be mindful that by the time we're heading towards the full moon, part of the reason why it's hard to be entirely appropriately productive is because our emotional and intuitive self is just, the cup is getting full, and we're, in a state of anxiety and overwhelm and overdoing and over processing everything and over feeling everything. But knowing that allows you to remain allows us to manage our productivity. Okay. Now, the new moon, as I've said multiple times in this video, occurs after the sun has done its assessment. The sun continues to be here for another week or so till February the 19th in Aquarius, and then it moves into Pisces. Mercury is in Aquarius till February the 23rd. Mercury is the planet that is going to move the fastest through Aquarius. And over the next week or so, 7 or 8 days, Mercury will make all the aspects that we are talking about and outlining. Mercury will square Jupiter shortly after the new moon. The new moon occurs tomorrow, February the 9th, February the 10th, Mercury squares Jupiter. There are 2 transits, 2 aspects that are encoded into this new moon, because they occur while the new moon itself is unaspected as far as I am concerned. And yes, some astrologers will say that it is squaring Uranus. You're welcome to look at it that way. You're welcome to look at it that way. Actions that need to be taken over the next month are important and necessary for Uranus to complete its transit successfully, continue to complete its transit successfully in the sign of Taurus. Fine, you want to look at it that way. I think it's more important to be clear that the new moon occurs after the sun has completed its square to Uranus and all the other aspects that it has made in the sign of Aquarius. Okay? But at the same time, I also look at, when a new moon occurs, I also look at what are the other aspects that are occurring around the time of that new moon, because the chart of the new moon encodes those over the next 4 weeks. Whenever we look at an event like a new moon, whenever we were looking at event-based astrology, when should I get married? What's a good day? What's a good time? When should I do this? When should I do that? We're looking at the chart of a particular time and seeing, and if it's a long-term thing, like a marriage, what is an auspicious time for that, and what energies are encoded into that time? Because the theory is that that energy carries through for the duration of that event. The starting of something is important astrologically. That is why our Jupiter transit, the beginning of a 12, 13-year cycle, is important in the sign of Taurus. It's auspicious. It is significant. And these transits through Aquarius and the aspects that they're going to be making to Jupiter and Uranus and Taurus are important. I'm repeating myself over and over again, partly because I know these repetitions are kind of helpful to kind of take in that information. Now, the two aspects that are encoded into this new moon are Mercury squaring Jupiter and Mars conjuncting Pluto. Now, Mercury, as I've said, over the next 8 days or so, will square Jupiter, trine the south node, square Uranus, and be on its way out of Aquarius into Pisces, following the Sun. The Sun does that on February the 19th, and Mercury does that on February the 23rd. Expect the next 8 days to be, if you were to say, well, where shall I direct my energy? It would not surprise me at all if you feel like you are having to capitalize on Mercury's conjunction with Pluto on February the 5th. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if the seeds and the action that you really need to take, and you will be taking over the next 8 days or so, are communication related. Getting those emails out, getting those phone calls out, getting those messages out, having those meetings, setting those meetings up, being in communication, using communication to try and manifest the next steps. Mars enters Aquarius once again on February the 12th or 13th, depending on where you are. And with Mars, it is the energy of pursuing goals and taking action, activity, physical activity, but hunting, gathering, taking action, making things happen, pouring our energy into the Aquarius part of your chart, the house occupied by Aquarius and what it stands for. Wherever Mars goes is where our energy goes. Right now, Mars is in Aquarius with other planets. Sometimes Mars is in a planet, is in a sign all by itself, and all the other planets are in different signs. Even if it is the only planet in a particular sign in a particular house, at that time, the bulk of our energy is likely to go where Mars is. It is our testosterone. It is our male self. Hunt, gather, pursue goals. If you've seen the symbol of Mars, it has that arrow. Go after the bullseye. But it is also conflict, accidents, bleeding, wounding, surgeries, blood, the red planet, seeing red, competition. When you hunt, gather, when you are going out to do things for yourself in a masculine way, it is likely that you will come up against people who, if they're not enemies or malefic influences in your life or negative personalities, are just moving at their own pace. They may not be moving as fast or giving you what you need. You could also encounter people who are after the same goals that you are. It could be competitive. It could be enemies. It could be conflict. So with Mars's energy and Mars conjuncting Pluto on February the 14th, about 6 days from now, 5 days after the new moon, Mars conjuncting Pluto and Mars-Pluto conjunctions, Mars-Pluto oppositions, Mars-Pluto squares are some of these aspects that get talked about. Let me talk about the negative connotation, the negative meaning, the negative energies that could be at work with this particular aspect. But let me also talk about the positive. On the positive side, let's start with the positive first. you might find that while there's an emphasis on communication and Mercury over the next 8 days, there's also increased energy and desire to manifest the transformation for our highest good that Pluto is trying to create over the next 19 years. And you're not going to be waiting 19 years. As I said, this year, Pluto entered Aquarius briefly last year in 2023. Pluto's entry into Aquarius this year is symbolized by it entering with the Sun, with Mercury, Mars, Venus following soon after, within this very compact time period, and being in communication with, think of a conjunction as a meetup. The planets are going around and all of a sudden they meet up and they decide to have a cup of tea. Mars and Pluto are male self and the planet of total transformation that cannot be avoided in a particular part of our chart, I find for our highest good. And Pluto's energy only becomes stressful when it is trying to free us from an attachment that is not good for us. And this is where this element of power dynamics comes in with Pluto. What has power over us that is preventing us from moving forward? When Mars conjuncts Pluto, on the positive side, you have your go-getter male self. Mars's energy is extremely important. If Mars's energy was not heated, you would just be sitting in your hut waiting for things to grow, talking about peace. And, you know, it's one of the things I say. One of the ironies of life is that you have to fight for peace. And if peace is Venus, the fight is Mars. Whether the fight is making sure that you're fed and clothed and housed, Mars. Doesn't matter what your gender or gender identification is, you have Mars in some part of the chart. You have to access that archetypal masculine energy to get things done, to put food on the table, to go after what you want, to fulfill your desires. But with Mars, it's as important that you don't turn into a bull in a china shop, that you don't start yelling and screaming, temper, conflict, that you determine what you're coming up against in the pursuit of these goals. Yes, Mars conjunct Pluto could mean coming up against, it's not a square though, it's not an opposition, but awareness of power and power dynamics, aligning with the transformation, knowing what the bullseye is. And you don't go to a gym to have an accident. When you're in a gym and you're deploying masculine energy to build your muscles or exercise or do whatever it is that you're doing, or whatever you do, you go for a swim, you go for a walk, it doesn't have to be gym, you do it with care and responsibility. You still take action and expend energy, but you do it with care. Encoded in this new moon are Mercury squared Jupiter, actions that need to be taken, communication-related actions, particularly important in the first 7 or 8 days after the new moon, but encoded into the next 28 days. Communication in the Aquarius part of the chart that will allow Jupiter to create its auspicious new start of a 12, 13-year cycle in the Taurus part of the chart. The other aspect that is encoded is Mars conjunct Pluto. Being clear about obstacles, opposition, competition, pursuit of goals in the Aquarius part of the chart, and harnessing masculine energy to achieve success, but keeping your wits about you and not letting the Mars's energy just kind of fly all over the place. The beautiful thing, the nice thing about having this Mars transit is that Venus follows soon after. Venus follows, and Venus and Mars are conjuncting. Venus comes in on, I give you this date, February 16th, February 15th, 16th, 2 days after. And she will, while she is there in Aquarius till March the 11th, she will try and balance Mars's energy, which means that Venus brings results. Venus brings opportunities. Venus brings financial opportunities, relationship opportunities. Venus allows things to grow. If Mars is the planet of action, Venus is the planet of letting things happen. Venus is the energy that makes the grass grow even between two stones and a pavement. That it's Venus is the force of nature, the clear feminine power that makes things occur and happen. Venus is what we refer to when we say let go and let God. Sit back, wait for things to come back to you. Tend, nurture, intuit, know when to take action, know when not to. It's really just, I mean, to have the Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Mars in the same sign for 3 or 4 days till February 19th. And then after that, Mercury there till the 23rd. And then after that, Venus there till March the 11th. It's really between the 11th and the 22nd that you've just got Mars in the sign of Aquarius. And at that time, all the aspects that we're waiting for Mars to make will be completed. By that point in time, the square to Uranus will be completed, which occurs on, if you really want that date, on March the 9th. While Venus is still there. During that time, you're just going to have to be really careful without Venus's energy to meet up and match Mars, to not get into it with someone immaturely, because that's the downside. You know, everything has its downside. You know, an overworking Venus is too passive and no action activity is occurring and nothing is happening. Things are not manifesting because action is not taking place. With an overactive Mars, you are that person who is trying to control and yell and scream and make everybody work at your pace. And you are that masculine energy run amok, and you don't want to be that. But the lovely thing is, encoded into this new moon, we have the potential. Remember, with Mars conjunct Pluto, it's also about what needs to be destroyed in the sign of Aquarius and where Aquarius sits in your chart and what house it occupies, in order to allow Pluto, in order for Mars to build the new that is going to help Jupiter and Uranus and Taurus and the South Node in Libra, but is also going to help Pluto over the next 19 years. And Mars and Pluto will meet up every 2 years. But there's a sense of, if something needs to be constructed or manifested, you are taking action, particularly communication action, over the next month or into this new moon cycle. And all the other planets will be making the aspects we've talked about, squaring Jupiter and Uranus and trining the South Node during that month. But the two things that I encoded are Mercury squaring Jupiter, making it clear that communication needs to occur in communication, transaction, transportation, even travel, the use of technology, social media, Zoom, I don't know, whatever it is that you use, however that plays in sales, resumes, interviews, in the Aquarius part of the chart, playing an important role in allowing Jupiter to create that 12-13 year cycle, end a 12-13 year cycle in Taurus, and Mars and Pluto conjuncting in Aquarius, taking apart raising to the ground what needs to be, creating the space to build what is new. Not just you're taking down the walls that need to be taken down, or the construction or whatever's there. You are laying the foundation, and till March the 22nd, you are building what needs to be built in the sign of Aquarius. The conjunction with Venus and Mars occurs on February 22nd, and Mars continues in the sign of Aquarius for another month after that. So, to summarize everything that we have talked about, the new moon occurs in Aquarius after the sun has done its survey of what needs to be done in the sign of Aquarius, the house occupied by Aquarius, and what it stands for in your chart, to support Jupiter and Uranus to do their exciting, energizing, aligning work for you in the sign of Taurus, and to release whatever it is that needs to be released in the Libra part of the chart as part of the South Node's transit through Libra. The only planet that has made the other relevant aspect prior to the new moon is Mercury conjuncting Pluto on February the 5th. All the other personal planet aspects, conjuncting Pluto, squaring Jupiter and Uranus, trining the South Node, will occur during this month of Aquarius that starts with the new moon in Aquarius tomorrow and it ends on March the 10th, when the new moon in Pisces occurs. Making it clear that the actions that need to be taken in the Aquarius part of the chart are ready, urgent, ripe, require, and will feel agitating. They're going to feel like they need to happen because the squares are an uncomfortable transit. You're going to feel that action needs to be taken and start after the new moon tomorrow in the Aquarius part of your chart. Everything that you have been building since January the 10th, January the 25th, is now here. The universe is like, all right, do it. Over the next 8 days or so, it may be that the bulk of the action is communication related. With Mars's entry in a few days, it really is going to be, the motivation is going to be all there to build what needs to be built. And once Venus comes in, it is manifestation time, results time, heading towards that Mercury-Venus conjunction on the 22nd of February. By the time we get to the last 10 days of February, energies will need to be balanced with activities in the sign of Pisces. Heavy, responsible energies. But also, depending on where Aquarius and Pisces sit in the chart, you'll need to see what the relationship is between those two consecutive houses. It may be that the actions being taken in the sign of Aquarius then sort of matching up. You know, if you have Aquarius in your first house and Pisces in your second house, or if you have Aquarius in your 5th house, 6th house, or 7th house, 8th house, or 9th house, 10th house. You know, there are activities being taken, for example, the 9th house, that will then have consequent results when the planets start to move into the 10th house, if you've got Aquarius in the 9th and Pisces in the 10th, for example. So you're just going to, some of the energies as the planets move into Pisces are going to continue to be expansive and consequences of whatever you've been doing in the sign of Capricorn and Aquarius since January. But some of them, and these are the ones that are going to feel heavy and responsible, are going to be about getting down to business and managing the crises that have been brewing in the Pisces part of the chart since 2014, 15, 16, particularly 16. The rulership of this new moon in Aquarius, we've got Saturn in Pisces. Neptune is one of the dispositors of this chart in Pisces. Jupiter is in Taurus, Venus is in Capricorn, so you've got that communication between Saturn, Jupiter, and Venus happening from a dispositing perspective. Uranus, and same thing, Uranus, Venus, Saturn. It's the Taurus part of the chart, the Pisces part of the chart, And even Venus in Capricorn. I can't make this up, Jupiter, Saturn, Venus, Jupiter, Uranus, Venus, Saturn, Neptune. All have a hand in kind of dispositing the chart of this new moon. Everything that you're doing in Aquarius is serving the activities, the seed planting that you've been doing since January the 10th in the Capricorn part of the chart. You need to do this because whatever these results are going to help manage the crises in the Pisces part of the chart and grow the Taurus part of the chart. If you found this video useful, feel free to share, tell your friends about it. Go ahead and comment if you feel like doing so, or like the video because it gives it greater circulation on YouTube. If you are interested in a personal reading with me, my email address is going to be in the description box below. You can email me there and I can get you the appropriate information. And by all means, subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already, and click on the bell icon next to it, the wiggly bell on top when you hover over the bell, so that you're notified whenever I do new videos. I'm going to leave it at that. This video was lengthier than I expected it to be, but I hope you're finding it useful. Most of all, I hope you're finding it motivating. It is going to be out and about less than 24 hours before the new moon. So there's nothing wrong with viewing this video if you view it before the new moon, to kind of just take it in, sit there, take that deep breath, regroup, recover, so that once the new moon occurs, you can start to take all those actions that you are itching to take, that you need to take. And the only thing that's going to get in the way of that, of course, for all of us, and this is just life, is our shadow side. So when we procrastinate, why we keep ourselves from doing what we feel is necessary, which is, of course, all tied to why we don't take ourselves as seriously and responsibly and really care for ourselves, and what is it that blocks us from fulfilling our potential and loving ourselves and understanding that action and motivated and aligned action is what might be considered in Buddhist terms right action. Is really the most effective way to honor ourselves and build what we feel we're here to build. And in that process, then honor and love others as well. All right, I will leave it at that. I don't know what took me down that path. Thank you.